One. We are recording now. Well, this is fun. I'm pretty excited to be doing this finally. This project has been more than a year in the making at this point, and we kind of just we'd come together for a short period of time and kind of discuss doing it. Maybe meet once on Teams or something, and then we'd just kind of drop it just because we all had busy schedules and all four of us are in different states. Three of these guys are on the Eastern time zone. I work on the Western time zone. So it makes it somewhat challenging to schedule. But at this point, I think three of four of us are seniors in high school. So we're enjoying a little bit more free time than we normally would have here. And Jason is still kind of, I guess, slaving away with college work. So I feel for you there, but I'm glad that you can at least find some time there. But so yeah, this is our first episode on the podcast that is yet to be named for turtles. We got to figure that one out. Maybe that's something that we can do. But today we've got on Simone. I don't. I guess the last name. I don't want to butcher that. I should have asked, but if you is it Roe or
Yeah, it's Rouot. Rouot. I think it's
okay?
it's pretty hard to pronounce for American people, but it's a French name. So
No, yeah, I would not have gotten that. So thanks
no,
for helping me there. But yeah, Simone, I think we've all, if you're in the turtle world, you definitely know about his Instagram page. It's one of the coolest out there, I think. And we all have followed him for a while, and probably all have our individual kind of interactions and talking to him about a lot of things. So we're excited. We're excited to talk turtles. I guess we can just kind of get things started off. The first question we're all sort of curious about in general, and this is the first thing that we get asked all the time. But why turtles? You know, what is it? What was your first experience with them, and what do you find interesting, and what got you started with that?
so I think my answer will be not very different from many other people who you could ask the question because while I was 7 years old, my parents just bought a radio slider and we had this turtle at home. Also, I was a very curious kid, so I've always been interested in nature, in wildlife, animals, etc. And I was always exploring in nature. I was lucky enough to grow up in a big house with a big garden. And when my parents bought that small radius slider, just like this, it was in 2004 actually. I remember the price. At that time, they were like about 27 euros, which is nothing. And people who just bought hundreds and thousands of them, which were exported from Florida at that time. So I got these little sliders, and then my interest for turtle grew up gradually. And then I got books, and then I went on the internet. There were the first turtle forum at that time, and that's how I learned everything by myself on turtle, reading books, etc. And then you met people who are becoming your friend, and that's how a passion begins, I guess.
That's that's
Yeah.
awesome. That you were on sort of the turtle the old like Google turtle forum that they used to do. Is that the one?
I mean, in France, there was two big forum, and it's a lot of people who just they have a turtle, they have question on it, they don't know how to keep it, they don't know what kind it is, so they just post picture of it on the forum, and then you answer. And there are also other people who are more interested into turtle, who maybe have some nice species, and they were just showing off pictures, discussing about biology, breeding, field research, or whatever. So I grew up spending a lot of time on this forum, actually, yes. And now I have to say that with the rise of social media, all these forums, they are basically dead now. But if you want some interesting information on turtle and tortoises, you can go back to these old pages, and sometimes you find very interesting stuff, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely true. We've been Jack and I did some stuff on the one
Or
that
the
we
sport.
have that's pretty common here. and it's actually pretty interesting too how there's people kind of just lurking on there that are almost like looking for questions because they're not a lot of the you know the people that have been doing this for a while that's sort of their method of communication because they started on the forum. They don't do Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was still surprised. Maybe 2019, we posted something on there, and we still got some pretty high quality answers in terms of people's. But you wouldn't necessarily expect. But yeah, no, they've definitely collapsed quite a bit. And that community is sort of falling, but it's kind of merged into Instagram now. I don't know. How do you feel? Wait, I feel like the forum definitely had its pluses in terms of kind of moderating the nonsense, you know. Facebook, I'm not so sure about that, but
Yeah. What I liked about forum is that you could have like real discussion, and I feel like, I mean, Instagram is just a way of sharing pictures and videos, right? It's not a way to discuss things. The comments and everything on the app is not made for people to discuss. Actually, uh, Facebook more, I think, and I believe that there are many turtle groups on Facebook that are interesting to be in. Because also it's easier to discuss than on Instagram, from my point of view. But Instagram is great because you can just share pictures with lots of people and meet new people also from everywhere. So
yeah, it's definitely a powerful tool in terms of communication. I sort of that was one of the things too. I always liked writing and communicating, and so when I picked it up, I guess like 8 years ago now at this point, I was just interested in writing about things, and obviously as like a sixth grader, it's sort of evolved now into something I hope that's better than it was in the past. But there's always it's fun to just it's it's kind of an experimental template. I like to use it to figure out what people want to hear, and I think no one really reads. No one reads many of the captions, but maybe they make it through the first few
I
sentences.
read
Or
them. I read
okay,
them.
okay, well,
But
okay.
many people
They're okay. Well, I have
they just
okay,
scroll and scroll, and they don't read. They
okay.
don't
Well,
read.
I I'm flattered, but I hope they're a good use of everyone's time. But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, talking about Instagram though, I would say yours is definitely one of my favorite. Certainly European turtle wise, it's one of the only ones I can think about. You've had some crazy experiences with turtles in France. Uh, what what is kind of can you explain some of the work that you've done in France with some I mean you're kind of limited there. It's kind of like California, right? You don't have too many species, but the ones you have are pretty cool. So
Mhm.
could you expand on that a little?
So I grew up in the northeast of France, so there is no wild turtles in nature, unfortunately. And when I was 18 years old, I volunteered in the Village des Tortues, which is basically a research and rescue center dedicated to the Western Herman tortoises and also the European pond turtle. So I volunteered there, and I had the opportunity to go in the field and look at wild turtle kind of for the first time. And then, yeah, since that time, I was able to meet new people, make friends, and then go in the field as soon as I can. So that was really the first experience I had. And the most funny about it is that I visited this place when I was 7 years old first, and also when I was 13 years old. And I got back there to volunteer when I was 18 because before I didn't really have the time. And then after that time, I got also involved. We have in France something that could be it's an organization that gather all the turtle breeder, and we have a small magazine. So I'm also involved a lot with that. We write articles, we have a redaction committee, etc. And then there is also a rescue center dedicated to turtle because in France it's a big problem. You know, people abandon already slider everywhere, but also tortoises like Herman tortoise, Greek tortoise. and we can discuss this later, but it's a big sanitary problem, and also it's also a big genetic problem for the wild population of Western Hermann tortoises in the south of France. And currently, I am working on a project for the conservation of the Spanish pond turtle, Moremis leprosa. You know.
Yeah.
So that's what I do right now, and I was lucky enough to go in the field here and there in France and to see the three species that we have in France in the wild.
It is okay. It is 3. I wanted to. I thought that was the case. I was thinking about it, but I wasn't 100% sure. So I wanted to. So it's good to know.
We don't count the red slider as a wild turtle.
You better not.
Well, Simone, I just wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Here in Atlanta, we've been seeing red sliders also making a very slow encroachment on our yellow belly sliders. Have been hybridizing a lot here. So I just want to ask you, what's the situation of red sliders like in France or Spain, perhaps? You know, think about like when you were younger, and then compare that to now. Like, has they spread a lot? Has they spread a little? Like, what can we do to stop them?
So it's a big problem in France. And there are many, I know there is not many studies, but this problem is really well understood by the authorities. You know, all the governmental agencies dedicated to environment, they know that it is a problem, but they understood it a little bit too late. And I think it was maybe 10 years or 15 years ago, the European Union, they made a law to stop the export of Trachemys crypta elegans from Florida. So it was not possible anymore to bring red slider in Europe legally from the US, from the big farm that were based in Florida at that time. But so many red slider got released in France, and literally everywhere you go in France, I think you can find red slider in ponds, river, and also they breed. So that's the main thing. In the south of France, the temperature is warm enough to actually enable the eggs to hatch. So you find small baby red slider everywhere, and it might be a threat for the native species for different reasons. The first one might be concurrence, you know, because if the red slider go in the basking spot of the European pond turtle, if they eat more food, etc. I don't really have a well-defined opinion on that, on the concurrence aspect, because I think there was not enough study made on that. But of course, it's not natural and it's not normal to have non-native species in the wild. And it's a threat for other animals than turtle as well. The red slider, they eat a lot of plants, they eat other things that might be a threat for biodiversity in general. Yeah.
That's actually I was going to say that's pretty interesting, because at least around where I live, like in lots of areas of the Northeast, it tends to be a really spotty distribution, because obviously they're not native up here either, but they've been introduced, and it's very concentrated around like urban centers. Like, yeah. I only know a few spots in Delaware I can consistently find them, and then the rest of the habitats, they're just pretty remote. They're kind of in out of the way places, and I've never seen them in most of the places I go. It's normally dominated by Pseudemys rubberventris, the red belly cooters or the painted turtles, but occasionally I'll find hatchling sliders at places I've never seen them before. So they probably do have more of a distribution here than I even could see. But
and the most annoying thing right now in France is that it's not only baby red slider that we find, it's baby snapping turtle. It's baby Chinese softshell turtle as well in the south of France. Of course, it's more rare than red slider, but we do find them, and there are some small population of snapping turtle that are establishing themselves in the wild in the south of France. So that might be a problem for different things. Yeah.
It's. I heard you say something. I might have misunderstood, but did you say that you weren't sure about some of the impacts that sliders being sympatric with native turtles, if it's negative or not? I mean, that's definitely refreshing to hear, because I think there does tend to be sort of this just assumption that it's a negative interaction, you know. But we really, to understand non-native species and their impacts on the environment, we really have to take it on a case-by-case basis and use research as the foundation for that opinion. I think there was an opinion piece that was written. I'm not sure exactly, but it was kind of making invasive species biology a little maybe too political. But it was sort of saying that there's kind of this nativist bias towards in non-native species interactions. I'm not sure that it's. I don't know about taking it to a super political extent there. I'm not so sure about that. But to some extent, there's a truth in that we shouldn't be, just in terms of doing good science, we shouldn't be making assumptions that they're having negative impacts without really quantifying that. And I think it's definitely doable. I mean, I spent a year and a half looking at pond turtle interactions with sliders, and still have a lot of questions about it, but it does seem there's some interactions there. But it's refreshing to hear someone kind of have that, more based on kind of the facts of the matter rather than just the general assumption that a lot of people sort of, I think, make without any sort of basis that they're having negative impacts. There was a thesis though someone did for doing my pond turtle research on non-native sliders in France. I don't know if you've come across that.
In France, I know there is a famous study that was made, I think, in 2006, and the goal of the study was to show the impact of radio slider on small groups of European pond turtle, but it was made in captivity. So of course it's biased, it's not really reliable. And then I know there is another study, and we talk about the concurrence, but there is, I think, also another aspect that is very important. It's parasites and disease that these captive turtles might bring in the wild population of turtles. And I know there is a study in France made by Olivier Verneau, and it shown that the radio slider brought some kind of parasite. I don't know which one, I cannot remember. So it's also one of the threats with invasive species as well.
Going back to the Spanish pond turtles, could you maybe speak to like their distribution and like if they're at a greater risk of like the sliders than like the European pond turtles, or like what kind of habitat can you find them in? Or
so in France, they are restricted to a very, very small area, which consists in one very small river in the Pyrenees. I don't know how you pronounce that in English, but it's a mountain channel, in the southwest of France. And you can find them in some ponds and river also, but only in 3 departments, which is a county in France. We have them. And the global population in France is thought to be under 1,000 individuals. So it's nothing. And also, every population is not connected, which is, of course, a big problem for the survival of the species in France. But when you go on the other side of the border, they are very common in Spain. They thrive kind of in every pieces of water they can find in Spain. For the subspecies Moremis leprosa, because in Morocco there is also Moremis leprosa saarica, which is a different species. But yeah, in France, actually Moremis leprosa in France is the most endangered reptile of the country. Yeah,
that was interesting. I was really curious about the Spanish pond turtle work you're doing as well. I think we all were, because that's not one you hear about so much. I mean, I think Peter Pritchard had some I'm sure he had some in his collection, but it's not something I can say I've ever heard of in captive situations in the U.S.
No, I don't think.
Yeah.
I doubt. Yeah.
But the other thing that was kind of interesting is I know that when the Saharica, has there actually been an analysis in terms of the validity of that? There was in the past, I remember this was a long time ago, but there was a bunch of subspecies. It looked like the European pond turtle complex, and these things had the weirdest names. I mean, this was like I forget what they were, but there was one of them, and I was trying to. It was something super. It was like the European, like Fritz Jürgen Obsti, like the European pond turtles. That's one of those. But this was for the Spanish pond turtle. It was a subspecies based on, I guess, nothing. And it was, I don't know what the name was exactly, but it was just kind of crazy. They get wild.
I think it was in 1996. Mr. Schleicher, it's a German guy, I believe. He described several subspecies of Moremis leprosa, but mostly in North Africa. And yes, I think there was something like seven different subspecies. I'm not sure. I read the study a long time ago, so I cannot remember, but I don't think it was really based on genetic work. I think it was more based on morphological comparisons, etc. But also the subspecies Saharika, it was described as Moremis leprosa van Merijgen by a French biologist, Jérôme Marant. And then it got taken over by Saharika, I believe, because it was just a synonym. You know,
it didn't seem like there was much. And I mean, prior to really the past 10, 20 years, there hasn't been much. So you'd assume it's just based on sort of morphological work, which it certainly has its place, but I think sometimes scientists can get a little bit generous with how much difference they're sort of assigning to a taxon based on how it looks, you know?
Yeah.
That's pretty. Do you know what the basis for was it just the spotting patterns, or what were the head pattern, the head striping, or what were the
Saharika, the main difference is the blue eyes. You know, they have really clear blue eyes, which is when you see them side by side, you really see the difference. And also they have yellowish, orangish spots on the shell that are much brighter than the one in Europe. But I'm not sure if there was genetic done on these, actually. You know, and you find also the leprosa. I believe they're also found in North Africa. So Saharika is just a small population. I think only in Morocco.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That sounds about right. Well, the work you're doing in France sounds pretty interesting in terms of only 1,000 left and it's good to hear the true pronunciation of in the United States. I've heard people call it the Pyrenees. I think that's a butchered pronunciation. You said it's like Pyrenees, or is that a little
Pyrénées, ouais.
Okay, so you don't. So the S is silent, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. I like to geek out on pronunciation and stuff like that because it's fun to just it's sort of traveling and stuff. You learn things like that. But so you're doing what kind of research are you doing with the small population in is it southwestern France?
So myself, I'm not doing any research. You know, I was lucky enough to go in the field, etc. But we are working on a conservation project with Jérôme Marant. There is a rescue center close to Toulouse, and the goal is to create a breeding program for them, and also to foster research. So we have partnered with a veterinary school, for instance, and also with governmental agencies. And we foster students to do their theses on the Moremis leprosa in France, and we learn a lot from them. They are monitoring population. They are studying how much the turtle can bear pollution. There's a lot of study on that subject. So there is a lot going on right now. But the main goal at the end of the conservation project we're doing is to create a small breeding center, and maybe in the future, if it's necessary for the conservation of the species, then we will be able to release offsprings, hopefully. But also, it's important to raise awareness about this species because there are not many people who actually know about it in France, even though there is a governmental conservation plan for the species. But right now, it's more about aggregating knowledge about the species because we still don't know a lot about it, which is the case for so many turtle species. But in this case, we still don't know that much about the species in France.
It's cool that you're doing work with those. I mean, I could definitely see in 5-10 years when that's got some headway on it. You guys could, you and you said Jerome Moran
Yeah.
could really be the champions for those turtles and kind of and be known for that. I think a lot of the most notable names in the turtle world are known for a specific kind of species, but at the same rate are also pretty well versed in all turtle. It's a nice, as a group of vertebrates, the 350 some odd species is about the perfect number because it's not snakes where you've got literally thousands and you could never really dapple in every aspect of snakes and lizards and everything, but turtles you can really, I think, get an intimate sort of understanding of across the board, but also specialize in one area. It's kind of a nice aspect. Yeah, Spanish pond turtles. I found it fascinating that I in Peter Pritchard's encyclopedia, one thing that stood out to me about what he wrote about him, which was pretty, it wasn't too much information because late 1970s there was essentially nothing at that point. But he said that the Latin name leprosa was because they tend to sit in pretty nasty water, in like pools of cow pies and stuff like that. And it sounds like you're looking at the pollution aspect. Are they really tolerant, or do you have any ideas about what the?
So to come back to the name leprosa, the story you said is the most common spread story about the name, but actually it's not the real reason why they're called like this. It's because, so I think they were described in 1812, if I remember, by Schweger, and the holotype that helped for the description, it had some small, I can't remember the name in English, it's some small dots on the scutes, on the vertebral scutes and on the shell, which looks like the button you get when you have the lepre. I don't know how you say lepre in English. Did you understand it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the small there was small thing on the shell that looked like the lepre button on human. That's why he gave this name. And then after, there are many people who said that it was because the turtle was in the mud, etc. So it looked like lepre as well. But yeah, so yeah, sorry, I just wanted to say that because I think it's really interesting to learn about it, and I really love to investigate the name of turtle, etc. So I just wanted to share that with you, and I don't even remember the question you asked me first. So if you don't mind repeating.
No, I mean, you answered that. I always kind of just assumed. I'm the same way. I like to know kind of why things are named. I just always assumed that's actually really interesting. So I guess I don't know if it would be like Ken said, leprosy or just kind of
Yeah.
translate. I got okay. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what it would. That's pretty interesting. It's fun to especially it's interesting to know that Peter Pritchard sort of maybe that wasn't even known at the time, right?
Yeah.
When they figured that out that it was based on the holotype rather than their habits, I guess.
Mm. Yeah.
And that was kind of I guess later on probably after he wrote that. Well, that's pretty interesting. So that work that's going to be really cool, but that's sort of in its foundational steps, I guess, and you're kind of at this point um, looking into. Are you doing surveys, sort of just to look at their tolerance, and then thinking about doing a breeding project later down the line?
So I know there was a few different scientific research that were done on the subject that indeed shows that they can live in pretty dirty water, actually in sewer, sanitary, and very, very dirty water. And and I know that there is someone currently doing a thesis on that subject. So hopefully we will know more about that sooner or later. And yeah, the conservation program is more that because in France, the population, since they are not connected to each other, they're also very threatened. I know that right now there is someone doing a thesis on the pollution aspect, but previously there was also a study that shown that the Moremis leprosa can bear pretty high polluted water, and you can find them in sanitary sewer and very dirty, dirty water. But it doesn't mean that they are not endangered. And in France, the population are so small, and one of the main population also suffered from a big uh, I'm looking for the word in English, when the water level just raised super high on river.
Like a flood, maybe, or
Yeah, a flood. Actually, absolutely. There was a big flood in the small river where they are, and a lot of them ended up in the sea. So it could be if there was another flood, the population could be wiped out. So it's still good to have conservation program and be able to actually have animals that were genetically tested. So we know they are the one from France, and we are able to have offspring whenever we want if it's needed for any conservation program.
That's cool work. I mean, there's certainly a niche there. I think I'm curious too. So the European pond turtles they are at least are syntopic, right? They kind of occur in the same area as Spanish pond turtles, and you've worked with those, I think, pretty extensively too.
Mhm.
Have you noticed? Do they have a different tolerance level to some of those pollutants, or what have you noticed with them?
Yeah, this I don't know, but for both species, the first thing you can notice is that you can find them in pretty different sorts of habitats. They live in rivers, they live in ponds, they live in lakes, and they adapt very easily to any kind of environment as soon as they have all they need, But I don't know if there is any study right now on the pollution aspect for the emis. Maybe in California you have something going on pollution and pond turtle. I'm not sure, but
Um, no, there was actually at the location I did my work. There was a group that came in and did some tissue analysis for I think it was heavy metals and some other
yeah.
toxins, but it was sort of it was more of a like preliminary biochemistry study, and I'm not sure there were too many implications. They just took a few samples from near me. But no, I mean, I've not really come across anything. I'm not sure. There could certainly be something. It wasn't really within the realm of my research. Um, but it's a good question. I just sort of based on my experience, I don't really know sort of what pond turtle, and it kind of depends. Pollution's sort of a broad term. They
Yeah.
survive within the extreme I worked at, which is in the summer months, 80% urban runoff. It's essentially no natural flow, and you're getting large amounts of oil that are running off from sidewalks and other pollutants and fertilizers. It's super. I mean, you'll see this thing in mid-April. There will be a massive bloom in filamentous algae, and that's pretty testament to the high amount of nitrogen that's getting pumped in there from
Mm.
fertilizers and everything. So it's pretty polluted, but they tend to deal with some of those chemicals and that are in that particular stream. They seem to deal with that at least to a certain extent. Now, when you look at the proportion of sliders in that stream, it's about 4 times higher observationally. Are we seeing a reduction of pond turtles over time? It's hard to say. I think that over time we'd have to really come back and look at it 5, 10, 15 years later and just see. But then at that point, it's just too late. It's kind of the bane of ecological work. How do you balance figuring out what's going on with how to protect it if it needs to happen? No, it sounds like with your Spanish pond turtles that's something it should be straightforward. I mean, you kind of know that you need to do what you can to protect them, but the European pond turtles I find just fascinating just because they're so similar in appearance and ecologically to our pond turtles, and they're just they're cool turtles. I think you've got the Italian ones, right? The Gallo Italica on the coast.
In southwest and center of France, it's the nominative species, so Orbicularis orbicularis. And then you have a small population of Orbicularis orbicularis also in the northeast, close to the German border, in Alsace. And you have Galwatalica in the south of France, southeast, and Corsica. Corsica used to be Lanzai, I think, when that thing with many subspecies of Emis appeared. It was Lanzai, but now it's back to Galwatalica, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. It's just such an interesting group of turtles, but it's definitely in a position where they're so expansive range-wise that trying to tackle that question, at least genetically, is just extremely challenging. And it seems like there's going to be a lot of breakthroughs. And when you look at like population genetic stuff like that, there's only so much inference you can make in terms of what constitutes sort of a valid taxon and such. But I don't know, just naming them based on what do you think about kind of the current? You think there's anything that's sort of cryptic diversity in that group that hasn't been elucidated yet, or?
Well, I think genetic is very important for conservation for the reason that if you find a specific population that has evolved in what way, and if you understand, I mean, if you see that this population is very endangered, then you see that you have something to do. And that's the case for the subspecies that is in Turkey. I'm not sure about the pronunciation because there are so many different names, but I think it's Elzeisti. You can look at it, you'll find it. And that's the most endangered subspecies of Emis, I believe. So I think genetic is important to look at this difference and to create conservation program that suits actually the need for the different taxon. But I am not enough good in taxonomy, genetic, and science to actually build a clear opinion of should these subspecies be maintained or is it. Yeah, I have a shared opinion on that subject, and even regarding the genus for the American pond turtle and the European pond turtle, Actinemis emis. It's a difficult topic, and it's hard to have a clear opinion because there are great arguments on each side. I think. I don't know what do you think on this subject, Michael, about the genus Actinemis?
I think at this point it kind of doesn't really matter. It doesn't really
Yeah.
it doesn't really seem to denote much more. The whole basis behind actinemes versus emis was whether or not the pond turtles, whether or not European pond turtles were sister to Blanding's turtles or not, and just based on the type of phylogenetic analysis you use for statistical inference, it varied in one of the studies that was done. So the one author, the Parham and Feldman, were a bit conservative. They wanted to use Emmys, whereas a year before them, I think it was
Fritz.
Holman and Fritz. They kind of just used work that had been done based on some 16S sequencing and some other mitochondrial work that was done a few years before in the late 1990s, and they sort of reasoned that if pond turtles were sort of their own, I guess you would call it a monophyletic divergence within a clade of European pond turtles, Blanding's turtles, if they were sort of a separate split on that clade, that they would be considered a monotypic genus. But it was sort of, it doesn't really explain much more than just calling them Emmys, because all three of those turtles are closely related evolutionarily in terms of to box turtles and bog turtles and wood turtles. They're all kind of their one group. So it was kind of, I think, a matter of personal preference, and a lot of people argued it was oversplit because there's no need really to go beyond their closest relatives in terms of genera. It just makes it more complicated. I think my opinion on it is I don't really mind either way. I think I'd use Emmys just because I feel like it's more informative in terms of when you say Emmys, we know that it's closely related to European pond turtles and Blanding's turtles.
Yeah.
And even if they are sort of their own branch within that clade, and not sister to European pond turtles, if Blanding's turtles are, then I'm not sure it really makes much of a difference in terms of information. But yeah, I guess my view would be that they're just Emmys and everything, and that clade is Emmys. But yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to see a European pond turtle, considering that I've spent so much time with Western pond turtles, and I feel like essentially the rest of the world just wants to see Western pond turtles. Like I've got so many people that want to come see these things because they're so unique turtle-wise. I mean, it's just, I would argue that it's one of the most fascinating current situations that you've got essentially a turtle that is morphologically almost identical in certain circumstances and analogous ecologically, occurring 6,000 miles across. I mean, it's just incredible to me, and I've always wanted to see them.
There is not that many other examples of like two different turtles that are on different continents, but which are so close. So yeah, it's very. I was lucky enough to see both, and morphologically, I mean, the difference are very tiny, So.
Yeah, so I guess that's actually, so tell us some more about the Turtle Conservancy stuff that you've been doing. Jack and I were down there in late October, and I was back once since then helping with the collection there. But you got to do a crazy, I think, 6-month internship with them, and I mean, you literally got to go all over the place. Tell us a bit more about this.
Yeah, so for my university program, I had to go 1 year abroad to do an internship or to be in a university, and I decided to do an internship because I wanted to do turtle things. And during 1 year, I worked for the Turtle Conservancy in Ojai, California. I mean, taking care of turtle and doing many different things as well in the center, but also in New York. So I've worked at least almost 1 year for the Turtle Conservancy.
Okay, so it was a full. Oh wow, that's.
Yeah.
I thought it was that's incredible. And you got to go on a lot of trips. One of the, I guess, perks to doing work with them, right, is you got to go on a lot of different trips. Where did you go on some of those?
Yes, so we went to Mexico. I think, yeah, we went to Mexico. I mean, abroad, because in the US, I was also very lucky to visit different nature place and also different people who are interested in turtle. But I went to Mexico, and we also went to Okinawa because I have a strong interest for Geomyda japonica.
that's awesome. So we were all curious too. What is your favorite species? I think we might have just gotten the answer, but you can.
It's so yeah, it's a very tough question because I mean I like all turtles. I'm really fascinated by every species, even the most common one. Yeah, I mean, well, I would see a red slider in its native range. I would be fascinated as well, you know. So, but yeah, Geomida is really a genus that I like. But I've always loved all the American turtle as well, you know, the spotted turtle, even bog turtle, and all the Graptemis complex. But I like all turtle. I wouldn't say that there is one sort of turtle I don't like. But Geomida is my favorite because it's also the one that I keep at home with me. But otherwise, I really like the Testudo hermanni, you know, the Western Herman tortoise, because it's the first species I saw in the wild, and it's always a lot of emotion when you see one wild turtle in the wild. But Western Herman tortoise, I really love to see them, and even in captivity, I really love these tortoises. They are so common in France and Europe. They they embody really what people think tortoise is actually. If you ask anybody in Europe, at least, maybe not in the US, but if you ask what a tortoise is, then people immediately think about Western Herman tortoises.
As you're going on these like world turtle travels, are you getting reference photos for your painting, or like how do you go about like the sort of art process? Like I know you've got an Instagram page, and it seems like you're a pretty talented turtle artist. So if you could maybe like talk about the process or how you got started on that front, it would be pretty cool.
Yeah, so regarding pictures, when I am on the field, I'm not very patient. I just want to see the animals, and I love to look at them, you know, to look for them, to search, etc., and understand their habitat and their behavior. And I'm not really patient. I'm not the person who gonna sit 30 minutes behind the camera to actually take a good picture. And most of my pictures are just turtle in my hands, taken with my iPhone, you know, which is okay, but I could do more effort, I guess, on that point. But yes, regarding painting, I've always drawn a lot since I'm a kid, and I do a lot of naturalistic illustration, mostly watercolor, of turtles that I like and turtles that I was lucky enough to observe in nature or in captive collection.
Are there any projects that you're like working on right now, or any like species that you want to paint in the future? Or
Yeah, so right now I'm painting a lot of Spanish pond turtle because it's part of the world conservation program we have. It's also about a lot about communication and raising awareness. And we want to do an exhibit because there is a very talented photographer who takes a lot of picture of this turtle. So I am also stacking a lot of painting of this species for maybe future project that could be used in a book or even a scientific article or whatever. So yeah.
Is is there anywhere, do you sell these, or are these just kind of prints that you do?
Well, I have a Etsy shop, you know, where you can find some of them. It's not really, there are not all of them on it. But right now, I don't make many prints. If people ask, then I will do one, and then I can sell it. But right now, I don't really have the time to take care of printing everything, etc. So I just do them for fun, maybe for friends, and yeah, that's it. Otherwise, I have a Facebook page and Instagram page also with all my painting, air painting. Yeah.
We'll find a way to. It's her painting, right? We'll find a way to link that in show notes or something, or put it on the screen.
Yeah.
I find that pretty interesting because I mean, there seems to be like it just seems to be a very rare kind of combination. Like my mom is an artist, but I was never like and I never really took off with it. I just find it interesting that you kind of have both the passion for the turtles and the ability to express that in a form of like painting.
Mhm. Well, also, I've always been fascinated by natural history, but like natural history as a combination of all the science that are gravitating around the natural form of life. And I've always been fascinated by old scientists, and they were drawing everything by hands because at that time there was no way to take pictures. So today I'm kind of regretting that we can take picture because I think it was much more fun back then to actually when people were describing species they had to make the drawing, etc. It was a very funny process, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point because and the drawings were like they were immaculate back then too. Like there was no other choice; they had to learn how to do that. So that's something today that's not really a required skill, but it's
But,
interesting that that was
yeah,
it was so
and
prevalent back then.
many scientists back then, I mean in the 18th or 19th century, it was kind of mandatory to be good at drawing because yeah, that was part of the job. There was no picture, and when they were opening an animal and they had to describe the organ, the skulls, the bones, etc., they had to draw. So it's kind of fascinating that at that time there was people with so much talent, like being very good at science, etc., and being able to draw everything. And now we have I collect old books and old turtle art, so it's also a source of inspiration for what I draw. You know.
Certain people just have, and you're definitely one of them that have this ability to capture sort of all the details of an animal. I've tried art in the past, and I was never really that skilled at that. So it's just fascinating to see someone, and I actually enjoy sort of watching the process of someone paint something because you really see sort of all the little details they pick up on, and I think that it really kind of encompasses the perfect definition of a naturalist in terms of you really can notice all of these things and put it down to paper like that. It's pretty incredible. I came across one of your paintings actually when I was interning at Turtle Conservancy. It was I forgot. I think it was a cicalia maybe. I can't remember what it was, but it was sitting on the closet when I opened it up to put my clothes away, and I see this, and I didn't know what it was at first because I wasn't even aware that you did painting, and then I brought it to Max, and he told me that this is yours, and I think we shipped it back to you. So that was uh, that was my first introduction. I was amazed. I mean, I was like, wow, this is pretty incredible. But
Yeah, but those ones they are not that precise, and I see that the one you are referring about, it's there is Billy Eye and Quadriocellata, I think, on the same sheet. And but for the past few years, and also because of Corona, so we had to spend a lot of time at home in France, and we could not get out. It was mandatory to stay at home. So I made also a lot of progress, and I had more time to actually look into details and play in very small details. So, but when I paint one turtle, indeed, I try to model it as close as possible to what it looks on the picture that I have, or what it looks for real. So, yeah.
that brings up an interesting question. How did I know France? For whatever reason, I was hearing a lot about France sort of in the news in early 2020 and COVID response and everything. How did that affect? I know we're sort of well. I'm not gonna. I have no idea what's gonna happen tomorrow at this point. It's 2022. He's kind of just like, I'm sort of just doing my business and just adapting or whatever. But in the beginning of 2020, I heard a lot about France, and it seemed like you guys were really kind of on lockdown. In the U.S., I think we lasted maybe 2 months, and then stuff kind of just went back to kind of. I don't know. It's been crazy, but I think that maybe we were less stringent about lockdown. how do you think that that affected conservation in France? And I guess um,
Mm, that's a good question, but I think people who are doing like real conservation for non-profit or governmental agencies or governmental services, it was part of their job, so they were able to go out. But for at least 2 or 3 months, everybody had to be at home, and all the shops were closed and everything was closed. So, which was good for nature in some way, but yeah, I'm not sure if it really affected any conservation program. Maybe because people were not able to progress in their work, and also because it was more difficult to find money and funds for conservation program and studies. Otherwise, I'm not sure if it really affected anything. Yeah.
yeah, you were probably luckier than most countries in terms of uh, a lot of these countries that are more based on like ecotourism and such. I think were hit pretty hard, but France
Yeah.
obviously is a major world leader, so it's kind of that probably wouldn't be so much. But yeah, you never know what kind of research. But it sounds like a lot of people. I mean, it sounds like you sort of took it as a positive and figured out and worked on your art more. So that's I mean that's cool to hear that at least it was bearable. You know, a lot of people went downhill mentally. But yeah, I for one, when I was doing my pond turtle things, I went out in April, and like everyone, I feel like in April was kind of under this mindset that the world's just gonna we're gonna go back another 100 years and we're gonna start over or whatever. Not that's not really what I thought, but that's a little bit hyperbolic. But we all thought it was gonna be it's perfect year for the environment or whatever. But I thought the stream where the pond turtles was at cleared up and it looked real nice. And then I found out later in July that that was kind of just I guess natural variation because it looked exactly the same as it normally does. So we got a few months of a respite, but I think people should know that we're pretty much back to where where we were
Yeah.
at this point. Um, but yeah, that's some cool stuff that you're doing with the painting, and it really captures, I think, what it is to be a naturalist in terms of. Um, so yeah, I guess I'm curious. You mentioned earlier the Herman's tortoises and some genetic pollution there, and you've posted about fires
Yeah.
kind of affecting them, and they're only sort of in that small, like southeastern portion, I guess, of the
Mhm.
country.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little more about those? I'm curious to hear about that.
So in France, you have two populations. One in Var, the department of Var, which is it's the equivalent of a county in France. We call it a department, and it's in the southeast of France, in a very touristic region because it's close to the Mediterranean Sea. There's a lot of tourism, and also there are many people who live there. There is high demography, and the other population is in Corsica, which is less threatened because there is still more space and more natural area. But the population that is in Var is highly endangered, first because of habitat loss and fragmentation, of course. Urban development has been a big problem for many years, as well as the wine business, because they grow a lot of grapes in that region for the wine business. So they destroy a lot of habitats. And fire also has been a big problem, even though in every Mediterranean ecosystem, fire is something natural. But the problem is how frequent the fire are, because the tortoises, they are they take so much time to recreate their population and to reach high demographic levels that are livable for the population. So last year, unfortunately, there was a big fire uh, which destroyed like pretty much everything of the reserve, because there is a small reserve there as well, and many tortoises died. Unfortunately, I went there and there was survey, to actually count the dead tortoise and find the one who survived and rescue them. And basically, I don't think they've published the result yet, but basically one tortoise on the two. So approximately 50% of the tortoise we found were dead. So it really affects them, yeah.
The ones that survive, how do they survive? Do they like go in the burrows, or do they hide somewhere? How do they
Well,
do
I
it?
think it's a great question because I've always been very impressed by the how resilient the tortoise and turtle are. It's crazy what the turtle and the tortoise can survive and can because they bury themselves under big boulders that are close to the forest, and the fire basically came through, and the tortoise survived. You know, if you would be there as a human, you would be just dead, burned, or because you breathe the smoke. But they survived, and then they will not eat for many months. Even they would bury themselves and directly hibernate. So it was, I think it was in July, the big fire, and we were lucky because there was a lot of rain after that, and then nature regrow and there was food for the tortoise. But the one who survived, yeah, they were just buried, you know, and the fire just came across where they were and they survived. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, see lots of like adults with fire scarring or anything on them because like down like in the southeast here you'll see that on Gulf Coast box turtles and then the gophorus too, but they at least will retreat into the burrows if they have the opportunity, but you still find lots of them scorched carcasses and
Yeah,
like it's down to
you find burnt one, and also it's interesting to when you look at them, you find a lot of them that have scars from dog bite, and also because they get hurt by people who load them all. So that's a big problem. Or they also get crushed by car. Roadkill is also a big problem. But there is this place close to their habitat, the Village des Tortues. It's a rescue center. And when there is a herb tortoise, people might bring it, and they have a veterinary staff to actually take care of the tortoise, and eventually they are able to release some rescued tortoise every year. So it's great.
That's really. And those fires, are those fires natural or were those human mediated? I was.
No, that fire, I think it started close to an highway, and it's a cigarette. So every time it's human based. Most of the time it's human based. Yeah.
People don't realize what kind of impacts cigarettes have. It just in general, I mean, that kind of thing obviously is tragic. But there's also some research that someone that was in a program I worked with did research on cigarette and pollutants that are released when you drop them in the street and such. And he quantified this, and it was just incredible to look at. I don't remember the specifics, but the amount of pollutants and carcinogens that were being released into the environment was, I mean, just vast quantities from all the totality of cigarettes that get dropped off in every year, and it washes off into lakes and rivers, and you really wonder how that's being kind of biosynthesized and how that's recirculating. I think people don't realize our environment is kind of, that's a reason we're here. It's important to realize that, and the turtles are sort of a metric, of how well the ecosystem's functioning, and that in turn is kind of that should be kind of how we measure how we're doing. And so when we're having those big issues with fires and such, it's not a really promising outlook. I thought it was pretty interesting. I seem to recall that the tortoises from Var in France are a pretty distinct they're their own kind of genetic cluster as well, so
Yeah.
they're somewhat diverged, I guess. But that's kind of interesting that you work with that specific population. Um, and yeah, I mean that's terrible to hear about the fires, but it's great that someone and you and a lot of other people, it sounds like, are involved with these surveys. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess we can start to kind of wrap up, but we've got a few more questions, and then we also play a game at the end too. So you're welcome to participate if you'd like. We can explain that in a sec, but just I guess to wrap it up, unless anyone else has questions or anything, I'm curious what your future plans are. It sounds like that Spanish pond turtle work's going to be interesting, but any other plans for the future, or kind of what are your next turtle activities or trips?
Yeah, so right now I'm really helping for the conservation program we're trying to establish for the pond turtle. And hopefully they will start the building in the spring. So there's still a lot of work coming in. There will be also a congress with different communication, lecture, etc., and workshop on the conservation of the species. So there's a lot to prepare. Otherwise, I would like still to do some research on Geomida. I would like to go back to Okinawa if it's possible one day. Hopefully, we'll be able to travel normally as soon as possible. And also, I would like to go to Vietnam or China to study Spangerai in the wild. Yeah. Right now, that's my main plan. But of course, I would like to go back to the US and hang out with different friends that I have there. But yeah, China, Geomida, and for now, that's what I would like to do in the short term. Yeah.
Well, you're always welcome back, and if you're around in California, I'm more than happy to take you out, and we'll find pond turtles. Just don't come in December. I've had some people that they're saying, "Well, I can only get off in December or November," and I say, "Well, you might as well just not come. We're not going to see anything." But I can also find you sea turtles now too. There's an area where they congregate in a river near me. Yeah, I think
Convenient.
we were talking about that. Jack was here a week before I discovered this interesting phenomenon, but now when he's back and when everyone's back, we'll go find him. So yeah.
I was just gonna ask, when was the last time? Have you been up to? 'Cause I saw pictures of Instagram where you were up in Jersey. It looked like the same creek I went to with Maurice to look for map turtles. And when was the last time you were there? Like,
In spring 2019.
oh wow, so yeah.
And yes, it's the same creek you went. Yeah.
Yeah, it was right pretty close to his house, but that was yeah, that was a really fun experience.
Yeah, we all made a trip. Jack got to do the map turtles, but then we made a trip in late November to unsuccessfully look for bog turtles, but we did find, we had a wood turtle whisperer with us that pulled out 6.
Yeah, that was
in the course
impressive.
of like 2 hours, so it was pretty cool.
It was just one hour.
Yeah, that was. I don't know how he did that. I mean, it was like Caleb, this kid from Massachusetts, was just finding them left and right. I think he found 5 of 6, right? Or all of them.
One of them was a pair too, so I think he might have found all.
I think I heard Nathaniel found mating bog turtles within 15 minutes. We found mating wood turtles within 15 minutes, so it was still pretty cool. I had never. I don't think any of us had ever seen them. So
no, we haven't.
He found the 2 bog turtle mating, and I was maybe 10 meters away from him, and I found the wood turtle that was alone, but still they were like 10 meters from each other, which is kind of.
Oh, so Nathaniel found 2 bog turtles, man. I heard he just walked up and like almost hit him with the shoe or something.
Yeah.
And then you found a wood turtle 10 meters away from that.
Yeah. Exactly at the same moment.
I can't even imagine. We would have been freaking out. We were those vernal, or I guess the bogs and the fens there are just fascinating. I didn't even expect how beautiful in that one area when you go back there and the streams run through it. I mean, it's really hard to explain. It's like a pond, but then the grass tussocks kind of, and you can walk through it. You know, it's
Yeah, I think it's a very good example of typical bog turtle habitat. But that place is like pristine. It's very well preserved, and yeah.
That's the
yeah,
impressive
no,
part. Like, there's technically two populations of bog turtles in my state, and Delaware is really small, like 90 miles like across, and but both populations are on the other side of the state and they're like protected. So I never even been to them. Uh, I don't live very far from where we went last spring to look for them, and habitat was not is nothing I've ever really seen. Like I'm normally used to seeing much more altered or polluted habitats than that. I guess it was just like the right condition. It was still pristine for bog turtle habitats around here.
we did the night before we went out to about midnight and we're walking in kind of some sketchy parts of the woods, but we were also in sort of I guess, a sort of a bog out there, and we came across. Well, this was actually in a river. We came across a snapping turtle, common snapping turtle. One of the guys pulled it out, and it was super emaciated and really underweight, but it was about maybe what 35 degrees out,
Post.
and the snapper was, I guess, sitting in the shallows at like 11 o'clock at night, and we walked up and one of the guys with us found it. That was kind of interesting, but yeah, it was kind of an interesting. Um, so I don't know if you're short on time, Simone.
No, no, not.
Okay, but
Yeah.
so we do. As long as everyone is good on questions, I think that I'm certainly good. I mean, we could talk for hours. I just don't want to take it too long because I feel like at a certain point people just kind of go to the next. But so we do a little game here. This one, it's kind of an interesting idea, and you are welcome to participate if you want. But so what we do is I do a random name generator. We pull this up, we put everyone's name in it, and we spin it once. And if you get picked the first time, you've got 2 minutes to come up with 5 questions about turtles.
Yeah, that's
And so you got to come up with 5 questions about turtles, and then we spin it again. And the second name has 2 minutes. Well, they have to just wait, I guess. And then the second name picked has to answer those 5 questions. And if you get 3 out of 5, you're safe. And if you get less than that, then one of us has to open up the next episode with something that the other person that stumped them with the questions gets to dictate what they have to do. Something kind of silly at the beginning of the next episode. So you're welcome to participate or just be someone who asks questions, or if you want to receive, I'll put you in the generator if you want.
Yeah.
Don't feel pressured. I don't want to, but I think that you would certainly be fine with this considering your knowledge of turtles. So I guess I'll pull this up, and everyone gets serious when this goes on because we can't sacrifice
Our credibility is at stake here.
Yeah, well, in our first episode that is no longer in existence, I picked the questions and Jason answered, and Jason got 3 out of 5, so he was safe. I was kind of disappointed there.
Does that mean that I don't have to have my name on the wheel or whatever this go around, or?
I mean,
That's
I
actually
don't know. I think
that could be how you do it because like if somebody like wins it, then they don't have to participate the next time. I guess.
Seems fair. I'll spectate.
all right. So that's what you want. I guess you get the prize. You get the prize this time. So yeah, I guess that's fair. So if you get the 3 out of 5, you get to pick what someone does, and then I guess you can either make someone do something or you can opt out the next time. Sure, that's fine. I'm gonna pull this up really quick. Yeah, we still got the This doesn't count, by the way. I got to go back through this. Okay, so I'll just do it like this. Well, there's no reason for me to delete all those names. I guess, yeah, Ken. And then Simone, so you're down?
Yeah.
All right, so he's in. So this is the first click. Whoever gets this gets to pick the questions. And the goal here is to make them as hard as possible.
Oh,
Oh man.
There he goes. Okay, well.
So I have to pick one or five questions for you.
So you get to pick 5 questions.
Okay.
And you've got approximately 2 minutes to come up with good questions. Since you're our guest, we'll give you more time to find 5 questions.
Okay.
I know that can be kind of...
I'm gonna write them, and I tell you when I'm good. But I have few ideas.
That sounds good. Alrighty. All right. Let's figure out the second person who's going to be receiving them. Well, that's not going to work. We'll go one more time here.
You could also like remove his name from the thing so that way like
Yeah. Good point, Jason. Good point. We got it now. Uh-oh.
Oh man.
All right. I'm gonna. Yeah.
Okay, so we got a showdown between Simone and Jack Thompson. Let's see. This is going to be Simone's looking pretty.
I have 2 questions. Actually, I don't think I will find 5, but if you want, we can go. I have 2 questions that are, I think, interesting. The first one is how often we should feed a turtle in a week, for instance, in a month, or whatever, which is, I think, a very interesting debate about how much energy a turtle, or more generally a reptile, actually needs to live. Because in captivity, I think in captivity we overfeed a lot, all the turtles. I mean, that's my personal opinion. And it's a very hard question to answer, to actually know how often and if the food we provide to the animal is really good for them. Because if they breed, to me, having successful reproduction of turtle at home, it's not necessarily proving that you are responding to all their need and all their physiological or biological need. Yeah. So how often should we feed a turtle? I think is a great question. You can pick whatever species you want, even red slider, in a week.
So
1, 2. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I definitely think turtles are overfed in captivity because I tend not to feed mine much, very frequently. Like it's sometimes it really depends because I have sulcatas. I also have a single rhinoclemys, pulchrimera, and I also have a Russian tortoise. I have a few other. And most of them are inside right now because it's so cold out. And when they're inside, they're not as active. I'll feed them like every couple days or a week, and they have a good amount. And it's varied too. I tend to don't use tortoise food or those supplements very much. I tend to stick to more natural. It's like fruits and vegetables and occasional protein. And but during the summer, the sulcatas live outside, and so does the Russian tortoise, and they're grazing on the whatever vegetation's available, and that's honestly most of what they eat. Like the sulcatas, because a lot of people will just feed their tortoise like really sugary every day, and they start to develop problems, and that's not the kind of diet they'd have in the wild. And I think that's the biggest indicator of when you have a captive turtle, you should have an understanding of how they feed in the wild, how frequently they do, and what they're feeding on, and then to replicate that to an extent in captivity. At least
Yeah, well, the thing is that we don't really know how often they eat in the wild. So many species, we don't even know what they eat. And my second question was also related to the first one. and it was what is actually eating, for instance, a pond turtle. And of course, there is more and more study on that subject. And I'm thinking about this question because in Switzerland there was a study made on the Emis orbicularis, and we've always thought that they were mostly carnivorous. They were eating proteins, but in fact they eat a lot of seeds, they eat a lot of greens, a lot of algae, and I feel like there is still a lot to learn about all these aspects.
Was the question general question, or I missed the first part of it? My audio got a little.
So what is eating an American pond turtle? I think this one is more for Michael, but I guess you will have pretty much the same answer than for the European pond turtle.
Yeah, it's pretty varied. Go ahead.
Diet, I would like.
Yeah. What's their diet?
Oh well, it's not particularly specialized. I mean, that's honestly how a lot of these like emiding turtles are. Some aren't very specialized, and the ones that are like map turtles are pretty specialized for feeding on tough shell. But I mean, pond turtles retain the kind of slider-like ecology in terms of diet, at least. They're not particularly specialized. They can feed on a single source of food if it's widely available, whether that be protein or like animal matter, or if it's vegetation. They're pretty flexible, and that actually applies. That seems to apply to most turtles. At the end of the day, the ability to survive on a varied diet or on multiple different things, and that seems to be something that's aided them throughout their history, is that they always fall back on other means, and even highly specialized turtles, they can still deviate from their diet pretty dramatically and still succeed.
Yeah, I think diet is really an interesting topic regarding tortoises. I feel like there is a lot to learn about it.
I guess that was a win for Jack, right? So
I think so. I think that he reasoned those answers fine. How do you feel, Simon?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
I passed your test.
He's safe. Well, it's been awesome to talk. Thanks so much for coming on. There's so much more that we could talk about. Honestly, this is going to be the issue with all the guests, is we're going to be able to go on for hours, but we got to stop at some point. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm good on questions if everyone else is. I think Simone,
coming on.
It's been awesome to have you on, and super thankful you could do it so last minute, considering we were lined up. We were trying to get Maurice on this week, but he's traveling this week, and we'll probably do that in a few weeks, and then hopefully start cranking out more episodes with more people. But at some point, this should be available on Apple Podcasts, essentially any podcast network, and then we'll probably start putting it on YouTube too. So at some point, we want to have a few episodes done before then, but hopefully at some point in the future. Yeah, no, it's been awesome having you on. Thanks so much for talking to us. Turtles in France was definitely something different. You don't hear about that every day. And your work with the Spanish pond turtles, I wasn't even aware of that. It's awesome, and I think that in a few years you're going to be a champion for that species and recognized for that. So that's awesome that we could talk to you kind of in the beginning stages of that project. All right, I guess.
Yeah, Simone. I don't think we've met before.
Yes,
this is our first time seeing each other. So we're really glad to have somebody like you, international. I think most of our viewers are probably going to be American, so this is a great learning experience for international species. I learned a lot. So I hope you're on the Herman's tortoises. They recover well, and good luck with your paintings. I'm just glad we're going to photography now, because my paintings would suck.
Well,
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm really glad you were able to come on, and I don't think I'd ever really spoken to you before this, so that was a great opportunity. I learned a lot, and it definitely kind of opened up the waters to more international people. So that was great.
Yeah, definitely like a good way to get the information out to the public. I mean, I guess for like most of us, it's our first time hearing about like your work, ourselves. So yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing and answering all our questions.
Well, thank you for having me. And Michael, I recognize this poster you have behind you for the Galapagos Tortoises.
He's got it framed. Mine's pretty weak. I just
But this
tacked it
Oh,
up.
wow.
this is one of the last ones that Pritchard handed out himself. He gave me that, and I have 2 copies originally from him. And I framed this one. I actually have a whole roll of them. I have about 50 because last time we were there, we were packing up the institute, and he had a stack of them about this thick under one of the beds. So we were allowed to take them. So I have a roll of them, but this was one of the original ones. I got it in February 2019, and it's like $150 to frame that whole thing. It's like the centerpiece of my room. Like,
I have a friend who have it with the autograph actually of Peter Pritchard. But
that's cool.
I really like that poster.
It's a really good one. It's like a one of a kind too. There's not much else out there that really displays the different like types of Galapagos tortoises and really shows their unique morphology.
Yeah, it's certainly a unique poster. Yeah, but well, I guess the last thing I have to say is I might in the next few years be in your neck of the woods. I'm very close at this point to getting a pretty substantial stipend. Hopefully, I'm still not 100% certain there, but to go and get some international travel in college. So if I get that, Europe is somewhere I definitely want to come visit. So if I'm around, I'll let you know, and hopefully we can go out and look for stuff. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
It was great to talk to you in person again. Hopefully we'll cross paths at a TSA or something in the future. All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.